Last week, we made a video talking about how I am making a game. That's right, I'm making a game, and I have been making a game for the past almost 5 years now. This is the Pyramid Ultimate, an indie and roguelike roulette challenge where you have all of these decks of cards, and then you flip them for challenges for you to complete while playing your favorite indie and roguelike games. Last week, we talked a little bit about the history of this project, where it began, where it is now, and what the plans are for the huge update coming on October 1st. And one of those big things in that update is the fact that we're taking this from a Tabletop Simulator mod to a standalone application that we can draft our decks in the exact same that we would draft them in Tabletop Simulator. It's very exciting and very cool. What kind of is the process for doing that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how these cards actually get made in Tabletop Simulator, and then we're also going to talk about kind of the challenges we went through in creating the standalone application and what we need to go through in order to get these cards from a Photoshop document into the standalone application so that we can draft them and play the pyramid. So, welcome to Devlog 2. How cards work. Now I'm gonna warn you, the first devlog that I did, I scripted out the entire thing. You probably could tell from how I was talking. This one, I'm just freeballing the conversation here. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of moving parts, and it's gonna be easier for me to just talk, so it's gonna be a little bit more free form. I apologize if the structure is a little messy, but we'll get it figured out today. Let's start with Tabletop Simulator, right? So let's talk about how the cards actually get imported into Tabletop Simulator. For those of you that have worked in tabletop modding it before, you kind of know how this is going to go. But to get a card in the Tabletop Sim, you're first going to go to this objects and then components over here. And there's a little cards button. There's also all kinds of other stuff you can import in, including dice. You can make the custom dice that you saw in the previous devlog. But in our case, I mean, we're primarily working with cards. So we're going to click cards, and then you'll see here there's two options. There's custom card, and then there's custom deck. So let's start with custom card and take a look at this. When we drop it onto the board and we click it, you'll see it's pretty straightforward, right? You have an image that is the face of the card and then an image that is the back of the card. Here's the issue, though. This is for a singular card, right? And we have over 2,000 custom handmade cards in the pyramid. So to go through the process of uploading singular cards for every single deck, it's just insanity, right? It's too much to handle. It would take us a really long time just to get this stuff in. So how we went about making the decks is by making custom decks instead. And how these decks work, on the surface, this may look to be a very similar kind of import screen. You have your face image, you have your back image. The difference is that we also have a width and height and number. And what this basically implies, you'll see when you hover over width, how many cards wide is your deck, and how many cards tall is your deck. We can basically make a grid of cards, and there's actually built-in tools in Tabletop Simulator. In the game files, you can go in and you can find some modding tools that they have. We didn't really want to do that. We ended up making a template that has caused us a lot of issues over time, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But what this allows us to do is make a grid of cards. And that grid of cards we can then upload to Tabletop Sim, and it will splice them based on whatever width and height we put in here, and then upload them as kind of a singular deck of cards. So let's take a look at Photoshop now and see exactly what this looks like. I've got the Slay the Spire deck here that we've made, and you'll see that it's basically just a massive template of cards. You'll note that it's 10 in a row, 7 columns in here, and if we go back to Tabletop Sim, you'll see that the default width is 10 and the default height is 7. So we're basically going to import all 70 slots that are here in our template, right? Now we're only using kind of the first 2 rows of the template here, which is why we can then specify, since we only have 18 cards here, we can specify the number of cards as 18, and it would only import that number of cards. So going back to the Photoshop document, here's kind of how the cards work oftentimes in the pyramid. You have your primary objectives, and then you have your secondary objectives. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'd watch the first devlog. It makes a lot more sense as to what that means. In the Slay the Spire deck, we have 4 primary objectives. We've got beating Act 3 as each of the characters in the game. But then we also have a bunch of secondary objectives, and these are other ways to play Slay the Spire, different challenges that you can go across. And we have another 14 of those cards here, and you can kind of see those as they go. So for Tabletop Sim, it's really simple, right? We come in here, we upload this deck, we put our card back that we create for Slay the Spire. That's going to be this image that shows here, and then it will import them in, and we'll have, you know, our cards in here. And in this case, I screwed up the Slay the Spire deck a long time ago. I need to fix it in here. These are all secondary objectives for right now, but all those cards you just saw, we can get imported into Tabletop Sim. Now, here's the issue that we run into now. When making the standalone deck, the standalone app for the pyramid, how do we get the application to know what's what inside of the game, right? How do we get it to know, hey, there's only 4 primary objectives for Slay the Spire and 14 secondary objectives? How does it know to even splice these cards out of this deck file? It would be so much easier if instead of storing these cards as a deck like this, if we would store them individually instead. If we could store them individually, it would make it a lot easier for us to kind of access them with some code and get those images onto the screen. So that's what we did. And it was a lot of work to do this. And you'll see here, I have just for right now, I'm gonna hide some of my files here, but just for right now, I have the Slay the Spire deck as our example for this. We save all of these decks from the Photoshop doc as kind of deck templates here. And then we went through and we basically wrote a little mini Python script that takes this deck file, imports it, and then splices all of these cards into individual cards that we could then store and use for the new standalone application. So I want to show you a little bit about what that looks like. This is the Python code for the actual, this is for the actual application, but we do have this right here, which is our Python code for how. There's a lot going on the left over here. Just don't pay attention to anything, okay? It's a devlog. There's secret stuff everywhere. I tried to plan things accordingly here. I modified the script to work with Slay the Spire here, but let's just kind of talk through. If you're interested in code in any way, this may be a fun thing for you to see. Here's basically how it works. We start off by dictating kind of how many primary objectives are in the deck, and then how many secondary objectives are in the deck. So in this case for Slay the Spire, we know that there's 4 primary objectives and there's 14 secondary objectives. And again, that's just what we get from here, right? We got 4 primaries and then 14 secondaries. Then we basically say, hey, what's the path to the deck file? So in this case, it's in, you know, pyramid dev slay the spire deck.png, and that's this guy right here. Then we dictate what folder do we want to drop our spliced cards into. So I'm just gonna make a new directory right here that has, you know, the title of Slay the Spire, and we're going to have all of the cards go into that folder. Then we basically do a bunch of math, right? It's a bunch of math. I'm not going to sit and explain how all of this functions, but we're going to essentially using the PIL library in Python. It's called Pillow. Basically allows you to process images. We're going to use that to splice the cards up. So we do a little bit of math to calculate, you know, exactly the height and width of each of the cards, and then we're going to do a little crop on our grid image. That's our image that we bring in our template, and we're gonna do a little bit of math. You'll see here that there's some -3s in here and stuff like this. This is because the template, I said earlier that we had some issues with this template over time. This template is not perfect, and we had to tweak things a lot to make stuff actually splice correctly, and it's a big reason why we're struggling to get everything kind of fit and working together. So ignore the -3s, they're there because they're there. But then we save our images as PNGs. And you'll see once we run this, and I'm gonna run it right now, it's going to output, this is basically the dimensions of each of the cards, just as a little test that I do here. But if we go back to our folder now, you'll see that we have a Slay the Spire folder, and here's all of our cards spliced. And you'll note that we name these a specific way. We have them named, I'll zoom this in a little bit so that you can see it a bit better. We have it named as P1, P2, P3, P4 for the primaries, and then S1, S2, S3, and so on and so forth until S14 for all of our secondaries. And the reason we do this is so that in the standalone application, we can basically tell in the code, hey, if somebody clicks to add Slay the Spire to their deck, so coming back to here, right? If somebody goes and they add Slay the Spire to their deck, which is right here, right? They add Slay the Spire to the deck. When we pull the challenges for it, you're going to go into the Slay the Spire folder, and then you're going to basically choose a random P and a random S, and you're going to give those as the challenges to the end user. So it's a really intelligent way for us to still implement the randomness of choosing the challenges. It's still completely random, but we can kind of dictate and just drop in new cards into our resources folder without any issues whatsoever. And it makes it really cool, right? Because what you will be able to do, and this kind of goes into the modding of the pyramid, you're going to be able to drop your own cards into the standalone application. So I kind of want to show you this. This is kind of the structure of how the app is going to sit. You will all have access to this resources folder. You'll see that we have all of the games in the pyramid right now, including, if we scroll down, we have Slay the Spire in here, right here. And you'll note that this looks identical to what you just saw us do. It's P1 through P4, S1 through S14, and then we also store the curses in here as well as C1. And then the code for the app knows how to kind of process curses and then primaries versus secondaries. But what you're going to be able to do is, if you want to add a new Slay the Spire card to the pyramid, you can just make, P5 or S15, and you can just drop them into this folder, and then the app is going to know what to do with that folder. And it goes even deeper than that. If you wanted to add a completely brand new game to the pyramid, you can just make a new folder for that game, and as long as you have everything, set up the way that it expects to set it up, which is basically this card back apps folder, has all of the different games that can be done. And you'll note that the name of the file for a certain game, in this case you'll see, Slay the Spire all in undercase here. If we go back to our folders now, Slay the Spire all in lowercase is the name of this folder. So it basically correlates to your card back must match the name of the folder, and then when we're here and we click Slay the Spire, it knows to go into that folder based off of the name of that file. So in this case, it's easy peasy for you to mod the pyramid, right? You can just drop in a new card back and a folder of your choice, and the app will just load it in here like nothing. All of these buttons that you see here are basically just put in as images from the card backs into the pyramid. It's really, really slick the way that it's set up, and it's definitely going to be easy for you to mod the pyramid in this way. So just a quick little video today, little devlog to talk about how the cards get made, how the sausage gets made, so to speak. And we're excited to kind of be able to get this into your hands and allow you guys to mess around with modding. I'm going to do a little bit more in-depth modding tutorial in a future devlog, just to kind of fully walk through making a modded deck from start to finish, and being able to get it into the standalone application. But the reality is, it's going to be dead simple, and it's going to be really, really easy for us to get kind of modded decks going. So yeah, we're very excited for it. We're still working hard. We're implementing some new features. This is still all dev work that we have going on with the app right now. So keep your eyes peeled. Follow us on Twitter at Pyramid Ultimate. Join the Discord, linked in the description down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next devlog. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.